Welcome to AuthorTube News, where we find the latest news in publishing so you don't have to. I am your co-host, Carrow Brown.
And I'm your co-host, Tamara Woods.
And we have, it's not rainbows and sunshines this week. We did try to find like some more happier articles, but you know, I think we just kind of found what was just happening to happen. Maybe Valentine's week was just the week everybody was just trying to spread like good news. Well, at least I was.
Nah, it's not my fault. The news is historically unhappy.
Oh, it's really true. And speaking about things that are really unhappy, do you want to talk about how the RWA is doing?
Oh my goodness, you guys, I was even thinking about just not doing this, but we are in this. We're in this together. So the unfortunately named law firm of Pillsbury, because every time I think of that law firm, I think of the little squishy guy from the commercials. He push his little belly button every time. So they released their findings from their independent audit, and I read through some of it. I did not read every single word because, I mean, you know, it's dry, bone dry. It's not like a romance writer wrote it. So here's the findings in summary. Apparently, the board didn't consult a legal team before acting, which I think that we could have all guessed. There hasn't been a unilateral application of rules, so things have been inconsistent. The ethics committee report to the board did not address why Courtney's case was handled in the way it was. The ethics committee was supposed to have an advisory position, but instead the RWA board made them more of a fact-finding unit, which was wrong. And the board found Courtney at fault, even though there were board members who felt that there wasn't enough evidence for those findings. So ultimately, Pillsbury decided the board acted more out of incompetence rather than malice and prejudice against Courtney. Take that for how you will. And fun fact, you can look up more information about the RWA situation under hashtag RWA shit show. I kid you not, I did not create this hashtag. It exists. So if you'd like to look up and see people's personal feelings about these findings, there's your hashtag.
Oh, yeah, I think it's great that they basically got somebody or a group of people to come in and professionally state the things that we already kind of knew from the outside. It was just before it was like, you guys are biased and you don't understand what's going on. It's like, yeah, no, we're not.
Maybe we
not.
Get it.
Maybe we can see the writing on the wall. We're pretty smart people here.
So for anyone who felt as though we just were biased numbnuts, I guess we were right, which is fine.
I love being right about things. Except the AI talk I keep doing, I don't want to be right about that.
Oh my gosh. Wait, do we have more of that?
No, I want to talk about something that's even worse than AIs. I want to talk about how Amazon chooses what books get to get published on their platform.
Oh, sweet baby. Okay.
So there's a little bit of a purge going on Amazon right now because they're going through basically getting rid of some radical texts that involve anything with the word Nazi in it. And of course, like this, every time Amazon goes through and starts removing stuff for whatever reason, this always gets a group of people up in a rally for whatever motivation. Usually it stems around freedom of speech, and then other people like me and Tamara have to come out and be like, well, Amazon doesn't have to honor your freedom of speech because it's a marketplace. It's not a public platform like that.
Much like YouTube.
Yeah. And this was kind of interesting because they were doing comparisons between Castle in the Sky and how, because that came from Amazon, but if you go take a look at it, they did actually change some of the stuff in there to get rid of some of the Nazi stuff that you see in there, which was kind of interesting. And I usually try to keep an eye on what Amazon is doing because you have to watch what their TOS is and you have to follow those guidelines because no book is honestly safe. I think last year, I can't remember her name anymore, but somebody had a book that had domestic assault in it, and she was a self-published author. So because she didn't have like the backing of a traditional publisher, Amazon looked at her book and said this violates our TOS, and they took her series down. Like that's gone. Yeah. So that's gone.
On the one hand, I can understand maybe not publishing Nazi propaganda, I guess. But on the other hand, I don't know, the lines start to get really blurry.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people in the article from the New York Times were saying, because it's getting to the point where Amazon is kind of looking at the people who are publishing as well as the stuff that they're publishing. So if they see that you are like part of the KKK and you're a high wizard, they're kind of like, oh, your book doesn't get to be on our platform. They're getting to that point right now. But one of the big reasons that I do want to mention this is, I always like to stress the importance of the public perception that you give to people. And all somebody has to do with the good graces of social media is take your ill content and share it with somebody else, and you could be looking at losing everything that you worked very hard for. So you definitely have to be careful with publishing on Amazon, and if you and progressing forward with that, because literally it just takes one person to not like you or see something that you've done and not like, and they'll just use that as justification. Because I've read the TOS on Amazon and it's not cut and dry. There is some open-ended wording in there to include anything from "we just don't like you."
Wow, uplifting.
You were all dark and dour last week. I was like, well, maybe I'll try this week. I'll try my hand.
I refuse to take the blame for this.
But anyway, what are your guys' thoughts in regards to when Amazon decides to take books down for whatever reason? In some cases, I think it is justified, especially when they're looking at taking away books that try to romanticize adult and minor relationships. I think that's okay. But when we're looking at how they decide to pick and choose, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm very interested in seeing. So let us know down in the comments. Oh, so let's see. What uplifting story can we tackle next? How about how hard it is for authors to actually make a living being authors? Yay.
That's going to be that episode.
I mean, how do you make it happy? All right. So the Authors Guild issued a report exploring the factors leading to the decline of the writing profession. So, fellow writers, buckle up, strap in. So apparently, even though there are more avenues for us to be published, it's harder to make a living as an author now than in the past. And in fact, writing income has dropped by 24% since 2013. Ooh, that's smart.
Yeah, and that makes sense too, though, because the way that the industry used to run like a decade ago isn't the same right now. Obviously, what money comes in is changing, how money going out is changing. Yeah, sorry, continue.
Well, and looking at publishing broadly, not even just with books, because when you think about it, all of these U.S. newspapers have been shutting down, all kinds of mass print media, and that too affects authors. It's less places for us to publish short stories, less places for us to promote our writing, to write nonfiction books that are tied to, or nonfiction stories that are tied to our fiction to kind of get us out more. So that too affects how much we're making. And then they reported that fewer Americans read books than ever before. And they're citing all the increases in other types of entertainment that is competing for, reading time. So just 53% of Americans say they read books for pleasure, which is down from 57% in 2002, which, I mean, that 5% doesn't, wow, math. That 4% doesn't seem like a lot, but accumulative, I think it could be a lot. And then also Amazon's introduction of the Kindle, along with online physical book buying, has helped to devalue books, which I would say that's probably very true. Oh gosh, this is so uplifting. Makes me so happy deep in my soul. So half of full-time authors earn less than $12,488 a year, which is the federal poverty level. And apparently literary authors are hit the hardest say that 5 times fast, experiencing a 46% drop in their book-related income in just 5 years. And even though self-publishing income is growing, it still remains very small compared to traditional publishing. So self-published authors still earn about 80% less than traditionally published authors. And part of the problem is that supply far outstrips demand. Wow. Bowker reports more than 1.68 million self-published titles in 2018, up 40% from the year before. So I'm wondering, when are we going to hit like the mass of, like, you know, we've experienced as much growth in the self-publishing industry as will happen, and there's kind of a pullback in the self-published industry. Because, you know, with any market, you'll hit like a critical mass and then things starts to pull back a bit.
My thing is that, like, you know, so like when Amazon made it possible for you to self-publish on the Kindle, like, self-publishing did immediately very well. One of my friends who has been publishing for like 20 years, he literally quit his daytime job and he was published traditionally at that point because he was making like almost double what he was making at his job, you know, with his self-published books. And the only thing that changed is when the big five came and made that deal with Amazon, basically saying, hey, when you're doing your keyword searches, have our books show up first. You know, they did that. So, you know, and it kind of sucks because obviously self-published authors, like, I hate saying this, and, you know, you check me on this, Tamara, but an author knows what their audience wants. And I think that the big five doesn't know what their readership wants anymore. Like, I don't know who their focus groups are anymore, but like a lot of times they're pushing out books and like, yeah, this is gonna be the next big thing, this is gonna be great, this is gonna be wonderful, and it turns into a giant trash heap. You know, like American Dirt, like they spent all that money on that book saying it was gonna be the next biggest great thing, and I'm sure that author's making lots of money because of the controversy, but like, you know, like where are they getting this from?
What was it compared to? It was going to be the next the name of the book escapes me. It's about the American Dust Bowl.
Grapes of Wrath. Grapes of
Yes,
Wrath.
thank you. Grapes of Wrath. Phew, that was not going to come anytime soon. I was going to have to Google it. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And because Amazon, like you said, you always have to check the terms of service. Amazon's always changing the rules. So with self-published authors who have to lean more heavily on those rules, it makes the landscape tricky, very tricky to navigate. But this also isn't reporting how many of these authors are doing well. There's a lot of self-published authors who are making well above that 13,000 benchmark, and there's a lot of self-published authors who are thriving. And I wish that when these numbers were reported, those numbers would also be reported, but you never hear about the positive. It's always the negatives with the indie market.
Yeah, my honest thought, and it's not going to happen right away, this is probably something that's going to happen over like the next 10 years, is that more and more people are going to get fed up with the way that the traditional authors or the traditional publishers are going about with business, because for those of you who aren't aware, like more and more of the outbound marketing stuff is being pushed onto the authors. You know, like, so like in some cases when you show up to a publisher, they're kind of like, they're already asking you like those really important questions, like who's your demographic audience, like how have you reached them, are you easy to contact on social media, what is your marketing plan for your book. Like they already want you to come in with the stuff that usually their publicist will like go ahead and hammer out for you. But like, and it, like, I hate saying this, I like literally had a conversation with somebody where it was like, what exactly are you doing that I cannot do, because at this point I don't see the difference. And I think when publishers are getting to that point, because we are, as indie publishers, we are getting into bookstores, we are getting our books bought, we are being seen and heard by our readership. So I think when the big five can't stand up against that anymore is when they're going to look more at the indie community and be like, let's do a partnership.
That's so interesting, because that was one of the points that was made in this article. Authors are expected to do what publishers once did, i.e. market their own books. And they report that authors spend a full day per week promoting their books, which takes away from writing and results in longer stretches between new books being published and lean years for many writers. And I mean, that's in the indie world and in the traditionally published world.
So I didn't even read the article. Like, but yeah, it's just, yeah, more of the responsibility is getting pushed onto the author. I don't even know what else they're gonna push onto. I tell you what, if they could just replace us with robots to write these books for them, that's exactly what they would do. And I know that sounds really sad, but that's not a quote that came from Carrow Brown. That's actually from somebody that I know that works in the industry. And it's just because of the supply and the demand. You know, they honestly want to do more rapid release stuff, but of course, like, how fast do we write, you know?
Let us know in the comments. Would you be interested if we did some type of, I don't know, special episode where maybe we talked or interviewed some authors that we know that would be able to speak on some of these topics like rapid release?
So talking about all that wonderfulness, are you actually done? Because I had a nice follow-up for that.
Yeah, get into it.
So following that wonderful article is the one involving a British study where they found that children's reading comprehension has gone down in the last 5 years.
Oh my Okay, could someone please send a Xanax to 123 Internet Street? Good grief. I'm gonna need a sedative after this.
Well, okay, so like I thought that this was interesting, and this was a little bit of, you know, ex teacher Carrow, like, kind of zooming in on this, because it has to do with the reading comprehension that children are having going down. And the reason that it's going down is because there's no story time. There's less story time in the classrooms.
Oh.
Yeah, there's less story time in the classrooms, and there's less story time at home. You know, parents aren't reading to their kids as much, kind of thing. And so there's this one quote that I want to read from, and it's, most parents stop reading to their child at the age of 8, which is 90% of 8 to 10-year-olds read daily by an adult across all socioeconomic groups, down to 3% last year. So it's gone down like about 15%. Boys were less likely to read daily than girls, with 14% in comparison to the girls at 24%. And they even went on to say that some of the children didn't want to read because there was always some kind of exercise that had to be involved, right? So they said reading to children without the accompanying work or exercise is key. So they're saying there's less pleasure reading, and they're saying that there's just less reading happening in general. And some of that makes sense because a lot of the people who have cell phones right now are just instantly entertained. And when I was reading it, I was kind of doing like a cross comparison between the way that a teenager is now to when I was a teenager. And the only difference between me and the way that teenagers are right now is that instead of having a phone in my hand, I always had a book in my hand. Because I didn't have a cell phone to entertain me, you know, and in my part of the world, TVs weren't like easy to get access to, so my entertainment came from books.
You know, one thing I remember when I was, of course, I am from, you know, the United States, but one thing that we did in school, I remember that we would have these reading groups, and we would all get a chance to read something. Like we would sit at a table and get a chance for like some quiet time to read, which I'm sure the teacher was probably using it as a time to, like, you know, de-stress for like 15 minutes. It gave us a chance to just read for pleasure. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think that there was like a big assignment attached to it. We might have had to talk about it afterwards just to see if we comprehended what we read. But yeah, I think that's interesting. Also, I've noticed that there's been an insurgence, and you let me know if you've noticed this as well, of teachers and even principals recording themselves reading and having it available on YouTube or on Facebook so that kids can watch it while they're at home, which I think that's interesting. It's like they're trying to bridge the gap of kids not getting read to as much as at home and not being able to read as much in school. Of course, there's not like that's not a universal thing that's happening, but I have noticed that's happening more often.
We did not do that in my district. That actually sounds amazing. No, because when I used to teach, unless I was actually teaching like in the front of the classroom and there was like a quiet moment and somebody wanted to like go to the bathroom, I'd have them read a page from a book. That's what I would do. And I know that for some of you who are like, you're making reading a chore and that's going to make them not want to do it and stuff like that. A little bit of yes, a little bit of no. I have to, like, it was my way to see if they were actually really serious about going to the bathroom or not, because a lot of them just kind of want to walk in the hall and, like, touch windows and stuff. But it worked. And, like, at one point, I think after they got over, like, the initial reluctance of having to read out loud, they would, like, they would actually try to see who could read, like, passages better than the other kids and stuff like that. Like, there's always, yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. It was like this picture book called Oh No, and they absolutely loved it after, like, the first week.
I could see that. I could see, like, making a little, not necessarily a friendly competition, but, kids like to challenge themselves and each other.
Yeah, and they did that all themselves. Like, my requirement was, like, you have to read from this book to go to the bathroom. And then some kids would just, like, want to read the book because, they wanted to read the whole book out loud, and they would. Again, I was a math teacher, so I'm making my kids read to go to the bathroom. I know.
But hey, at least they were reading. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, and one other thing that I noticed, because, they are talking about reading comprehension going down, and this kind of goes back to my earlier thought about what our publisher's putting out right now, because one of the books that I came across when I was kind of looking for articles for us to look at, one of them was like a picture book about global warming. And my first thought was, like, none of my kids would want to read a book about global warming. Like, who is this book actually for? And it would be nice if more books that children were interested were being published, because when I was in high school, rather not when I was in high school, when I taught high school, when I was there, kids wouldn't read the books from the libraries. They would go to Wattpad because that's where the stories that they wanted to read were.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, because I saw that too, because, like, the kids were like, I'm on my phone, but I'm reading on Wattpad. I was like, hey, as long as you're reading some freaking words, I don't care where you get them from, right?
Wow, that's intriguing. Hey, you guys, let us know in the comments. Are you currently in high school, or were recently in high school, recently in school? What kind of reading, like, was it just a sign? Were you allowed to read from other places? Like, what were your reading situation like? And parents, what about with your kids? What's their reading situation like?
We have questions.
I'm so interested. This is, like, not a great feel-good story, but I think this could have a lot of interesting conversation around it. And I can't wait to engage with y'all and hear what you have to say.
Yeah, we want to know things. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going, since we're talking about the wonderful future of publishing right now. And I ran across one article that I had to go and find more information for, but it had to do with digital publishing over traditional publishing. And the article says that basically digital publishing is greater than print. I got mixed feelings on that, because if I could buy more printed books under $20, looking at all the places with a pointed look, that would be nice. But right now, like, for me, physical copies feel like a novelty that you use. But the article went into depth to talk about basically how, with the rise of digital print, the desire to have more physical books has gone down. And I know there was a lot of, I remember when Kindle first came out, and there was a lot of back and forth, and there were the people who were like, no, it's not the same. Kind of like people who are having a discussion about audiobooks right now. It's like, no, you have to hold the book in your hand. You have to actually physically turn the pages for it to count as reading. It's like, but the words are on the screen, and they're like, no, it's not the same.
I mean, that's some ableist BS, and I don't endorse it. In this house, we support all forms of reading.
Yeah, just saying. But I was really intrigued by this, because there were some statistics that did come with it, and I did find a supplemental article to kind of back up some of the statisticals that I found. And obviously, like we said earlier, the Kindle and the ebooks, like, basically changed everything when they came out in the early 2000s. And some of the interesting things that happened is that, speaking more recently, is that people thought that the ebook was actually going to go away, because in the early 2019s, like, there's a decline in sale by 5% when compared to 2018. Now, for some of you, you're like, 5%, that's nothing. Like, that's $10 billion, so it is a lot to the publishing industry. Especially when you think about where they're putting all their money at. And then, interestingly enough, in the following August, there was a huge upswing of physical books. So for some reason in 2019 August, people were like, we got to buy physical books. I don't even know what was happening. Well, my book came out. That's clearly the whole reason why everybody had to go get copies of my book.
Yes.
Yes, it's all about me. But
that's interesting. I wonder, because I don't really know the seasons of book launches. Like, are there more book launches in August?
I know that they have certain books come out like per quarter, and they always want to release books on Tuesdays and Saturdays because that's when they found that people will usually want to buy the books first. And then I know that it's also about like what promotional schedule that they can set up for it because like are they going to put the person on book tour, and it's also what they can haggle with like booksellers if they can get your book in the store or not and all that other stuff.
Intriguing. Yeah, I've definitely heard of the Tuesday. I didn't realize the Saturday also.
Yeah, so, and then one thing that they noticed when they were looking at, kind of how stuff was doing is that they noticed that there was actually a growth in nonfiction by about, it's almost by 23%. And the categories that did really well with nonfiction in that sense, like hardcovers for the memoirs and the biographies were doing really well. And then following that for ebooks was actually the religion and the spirituality stuff.
I wonder if those memoirs and biographies were more geared towards like politics, given like what's happening right now.
Yeah,
I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, I didn't go to check and see which biographies that they were talking about, but you're probably right. But guess who does? Guess who makes the most money?
Romancelandia.
Yes, romance and erotica still make the most money in the industry, followed by crime and mystery. Man, color me surprised over here.
I can't wait to actually have a piece of the crime and mystery pie.
It's coming. It's coming.
I'm so hungry.
But so they're still saying that it is a rough industry to get into, at least from the traditional side of things. It's turning into a serious like who you know kind of thing. One thing that they did note is that audiobooks are like we already knew that they were on the rise, but they're really on the rise. Like people are leaning more towards audiobooks than even the ebook and the physical books because we are fun enough in the middle of a multitasking society where we can't just sit and read anymore. It's like we have to drive and drop off the kids and listen to our book at the same time kind of thing.
Yeah, I know a lot of people find audiobooks really convenient, and I know at least in the self-publishing industry people are starting to dedicate time and money into creating more audiobooks because that industry is on the rapid rise. So in my experience, this is true.
Yeah.
When I listen to audiobooks, it makes me sleepy. So I can't do it. It doesn't work out.
I listen to them a lot when I'm making like the promo stuff for whatever I'm doing at the time, but I also listen to audiobooks when I'm like either cleaning the house or I'm drawing.
Oh, so I need to okay. Maybe I need to pair it with like when I'm washing dishes, which is my least favorite chore of all time, or something like that. Do you guys listen to audiobooks? What do you do while you're listening? Give me some suggestions, because clearly I don't know what I'm doing.
I was gonna ask what your guys' thoughts in regards to the paper versus digital copies of books. Like, do you prefer one over the other? I know some people who don't have a lot of space or who like to have a minimalist lifestyle like to just keep all their books on the Kindle. Share your thoughts on this. We have questions.
That's me. I used to be, oh my gosh. When ebooks first happened, I was like, y'all can't take away my printed books out of my cold dead hands. No, sir. No, thank you. And then I moved out here and I was like, wow, I have no space. If I want to read books, I better get into these ebooks. And I started like sheepishly buying ebooks. So now I just buy ebooks rather than regular books because they're just more convenient.
Yeah, and then one article that I did want to cite when we're talking about like the rise of ebooks actually has to do with Simon & Schuster Audio. Their sales have actually gone up about 15% since last year. So
wow.
That's really good. We're talking about lots of money, guys. So which is interesting because like in the previous year they had their sales had gone down by 7%, but I think that's just because there weren't very interesting titles out at the time.
No shade, but all shade.
All the shade. I'm just saying.
That is interesting. You know what? That's positive. That was a positive note. Audiobooks. Maybe we should be getting more involved in them. Oh gosh. So let us end on the note of controversy.
Yes. Yes. I've been waiting since I found this article to talk about it. Like the moment I read it, I sent it to Tamara. I was like, we have to talk about this.
And I was like, girl, I've already been reading. Because y'all have probably, if you've been around for a minute, you know that I do love me some Twitter. Like that's my go-to spot. If you want to hit me up on Twitter. And I saw like people talking about rage baking, and I was like, what's rage baking, and why are people so mad? Whoo-wee. It's a mess on this Black History Month. Such a mess. So in the beginning of this month, Simon & Schuster released Rage Baking. It's a collection of more than 50 recipes and essays designed to encourage women to use sugar and sass as a way to defend, resist, and protest. That's the quote. I did not make that up. The anthology was edited by Catherine Alford, a former vice president of Food Network, and Kathy Gunst of NPR's Here and Now. So all of this sounds pretty innocuous, right? No big deal. But then on February 14th, performance artist and activist Tangerine Jones published an essay on Medium called The Privilege of Rage, which I'll leave a link for that in the description. Of course, all of our references, yes, they'll be in the description. In the essay, Jones recounts how in 2015 she started posting on both Twitter and Instagram using hashtag ragebaking, and she created pages dedicated to both concepts. And her quote, "I'm a Black woman born and partially raised in the South. Kitchens are sacred, powerful spaces to me. I've been taught that they hold the heart of a home and collectively the pulse of the community. For me, kitchens are a place of alchemy and renewal." So she has been doing this whole rage baking thing for years before this book came out. And of course, they did not consult her for the book. They didn't ask her to create an essay for the book. She essentially didn't exist, which I found really interesting because here, you know, here's the gig. Before me, teeny tiny indie author, before I name a book, before I create a hashtag, before I do any of that stuff, I do some research to see if there's anything out there that already exists. So I'm going to say that I think that the insistence from the publisher that they did not realize that she existed, I'm going to say that's bullshit. I'm just going to call it for what I see. I think that they saw that there was already an audience there for this idea, and so they decided to capitalize on it. And instead of involving the person who created it, they did this.
Oh yeah, and then to add more insult to injury, it's two white women that are making this book happen, and they're taking it from a Black woman, and they got a lot of flack from it. And so they reached out to her to try and talk to her, and I swear to God, it was like the most condescending message. Like, I was like, what are you doing?
Well, the publisher, oh gosh, when the publisher initially reached out, that was a mess. And then the Kathy and Catherine, they reached out and they said, you know, we know this seems late, but like you, we want to see something good come out of this. And they offered to allow her to contribute a piece of her, or a recipe for the reprint of the book.
I'd be so fucking pissed. I'd be like, I would like, I know sometimes you guys get like a fraction of like Carrow Rage, but like, I would have leveled the entire fucking continent. Like, yeah, this thing's been yours, and it's you know, it's a really nice thing, and I know that we happen to overlap with you, but since you seem really nice, we'll let you put a little bit of pie into what we're doing. Bitch, go fuck yourself.
What killed me is that they tried to say that someone else had created this hashtag Rage Baker before Tangerine had, and that person opted out and was like, no, what I was talking about was absolutely different and has nothing to do with this. Don't bring this to me. Like, because they wanted so bad for it not to be true. So they created another scenario.
It's so fucking stupid. Like, this is going back to, like, at the start of the podcast when I said that most publishers are fucking tone deaf right now, because they really are. Like, nobody's taking the time to actually research things. They don't know what their audience wants. And in this case, they're trampling over somebody just because they might be able to get a profit from it. I mean, I hate saying this. We've seen plenty of books that, like, publishers have put through because they think it's a guaranteed sell, only to watch it, like, explode in their face. Like, it gotta change. It really needs to change.
It's reprehensible. You know what? It's 2020. Google exists. And the thing about it is, I can't help but wonder, did they do this way because they knew the Black Twitter would explode? There would be a lot of conversation and discourse around it, and that would propel it to sell more books. Because as we've discussed before, negative press doesn't necessarily equal negative sales. In fact, oftentimes it's the opposite. And I mean, that's that on that. That's how I feel about that. Y'all can let us know in the comments how you feel. What do you think about it? Had you heard about this before? And of course, the reference articles will be in the description, because I'm not going to go through like every single point. I just wanted to let y'all know of this tomfoolery and shenanigans. This is what they wanted, and they got it.
I hate it. I hate this way of marketing. It is negative. Nobody is winning in this. It's just a whole bunch of like, how can we get people riled up so that way they'll spread the word of our book, which sure, maybe a valid tactic, but then you've got people like me who are going to get pissed off on the behalf of this poor woman who has been doing this for fucking years.
Doing it for years, but don't worry, they're going to donate a portion of their profits to one of her favorite charities. So, I mean, that makes it all good, right?
Sure, it makes it great. Yeah. We should really talk about something. Yeah, we should talk about, we should talk about something better, like book releases that are coming out. We should do that.
It's time for AuthorTube news show notes.
Woo! Those were our free 50 sound effects. You are most welcome.
First up, we have Charlotte Byrne, and their book is called Folked Up. It's a YA comic fantasy, and it's launching March 13th. And it'll be available in Amazon, selected bookshops, and via their website. And their tagline is, teen musician Matty Groves must navigate the world of old England in order to stop the ritualistic killing of his girlfriend. Oh my goodness.
So much drama. I'm here for it.
Oh, and please say hi to me on Twitter at CharLadyByrne. Cute.
We'll be sure to include that in the bottom.
Absolutely.
All right, so that brings us to our next book, which is going to be done by A.L. Williams. That's Alec Williams. Woo!
Woo!
Alec is having another book coming out. It is Hopeless Scars 2. It is a paranormal romance. It is coming out on the 14th. It will be available on Amazon, and its tagline is 2 Scars, 1 Path. And then I think Alec tried to give us the link, but I had to go find it because for some reason it didn't come over. But the link is down there below as well. And one interesting thing when I went to go find the link is that he's got all of his friends helping him with this book. And I thought that that was actually really super cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So congratulations, Charlotte. Congratulations, AL. And you guys, links are in the description. Pick them up. They're spicy hot. Also, Do you have a book, or a friend has a book that's going to be launching soon? Let us know. There's a link in the description. You can fill out that information. We've added a column for your Twitter handle so that when we talk about you, we can shoot you the link so you'll know. So fill it out and let us know, because we want to talk about your book.
We want to talk about your books. But yeah, that's gonna be us. Feel free to like the video. Feel free to share the video. If you find any interesting articles that you think should be shared with the world, feel free to send that to us as well at authortubenews@gmail.com. That link is also down below. Or you can contact us on Twitter. Tamara runs the Twitter handle, so she's usually like razor fast on that.
Yes, because as I said, it's where I live. I live on the Twitter.
Yeah, not so much. You can find me on Facebook.
Yeah, so wait a second. All right, I have to look up our Twitter because it's weird. What the hell is it? Oh yes, and our Twitter is at AuthorTubeN, because news did not fit.
Oh, that's so unfortunate. But yeah, that's us for the day. Thank you guys so much for listening. Feel free to answer any of those questions. We look forward to having these discussions with you. But I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and I will talk to you all again real soon.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye. We're waving.
Bye.
Waving. Love us. Love us.
Give us some love.
Please love us.